And we're live. Welcome to yet another edition of PCS Impact Q&A. And today is brought to you by the letter M. That's right, because I am MJ, the Director of Community Outreach at PCS Grades. Boom. And today, of course, as always, we have the lovely Megan Harless, our PCS Reform Advocate and resident BA, censored for little ears in your room because we love you. Also with us are our two guests. We also have, again, another Megan. So we got Megan squared over here. I think that's the right term, right? With the math?
Yeah, I like it. Megan squared.
Yes. And then we have Chaplain Twig Sargent, and he may not have an M, but he's going to keep the rest of those M's in line, right? We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about keeping the faith through your next PCS. That is a thing. We'll get down to the nitty-gritty of that topic and give our guests a chance to introduce themselves. But first, we're going to go over those housekeeping items as we do every week. Ready, set, here we go. All right. We have the answers. You got questions? Leave them in the comment section below because we've got the answers. If we don't have the answers, we know who does. And if we don't know either of those things right at the moment, we're going to take your questions for action and get back to you with an answer. Speaking of which, we have these lovely experts, subject matter experts here, and we bring these experts to you from Transcom to education experts to moving industry professionals to those who are in the faith community and leaders. We bring them to you because they are the source. Sometimes you're going to have questions specific to your military family when it comes to PCSing. And in those specific situations, you will have two forever and always resources. Number one, your local chain of command. Number two, your local transportation office. Those are the people who know you. Those are the people who are dealing with your stuff. Those are the people who can take your issue and further it for action. Last, and certainly not least, we need to do our part, people. We've got to do our part. We have got to flatten that curve. Wear a mask, social distance, whatever it takes to do our part. Because when we flatten that curve, we're going to flatten Murphy with it. You hear me, Murphy? We're coming for you. And without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Megan for those DoD updates. Megan?
Hey, everybody. So just a couple of things this week. Last week, we talked about how if you were leaving out of the Seattle port, the terminal for an Oconus move, that you had to have a negative PRC COVID test within, I believe it was 48 hours of your departure. That is also going to be applied forward for if you are leaving out of the Baltimore terminal as well. So if you are going to be going Oconus out on one of those two terminals, just be prepared that you're going to have that COVID negative test results with you when you depart. The second thing is that the Marine Corps has released a really great video about why your customer service satisfaction survey is important. We're going to post that link in the comments below so you can watch it, you can see it. But basically, that survey is how the DoD, how Transcom kind of gets feedback on your experience that you had for your PCS. So filling it out, it notifies them of that. And that survey also counts to 70% of a company's best value score. That best value score is how they get rated and how they get assigned contracts for their move. So a little feedback on that. So pre-COVID, we had about 400,000 shipments a year. Only about 24% of that actually fill out the survey. So you think around 100 and some thousand actually fill out the survey. And of that 24% that fill it out, they give feedback that they are 96% satisfied with their moves. So we hear a lot of times that, we had a horrible move, things are awful, but having to fill out that survey, really goes a long way into showing the DoD what your experience was like and, the companies and how they get awarded those contracts. So if you've moved within the past 12 months, get on DPS, click the link for the survey, go fill it out. So that's all I got for now. I'll send it back to you, MJ.
Awesome. Thank you so much for them updates. See, just a reminder to everybody, Megan Harless, Megan 2.0, keeps up on those policy updates for us and breaks it down Barney style for the peeps like me so that we don't have to jump through hoops looking at those tireless regulations, though it is encouraged to know your stuff. Now, on to business. I would first like to introduce one of our two guests. We'll start with you, Chaplain Twig Sargent, who I happen to know from previous duty stations as well. But Chaplain Sargent, go ahead and tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Twig Sargent. My wife, Joanna, and I, Navy family. We've been married for 21 years, and we have 4 kids. From college to high school senior to middle schooler to elementary school. So, and my wife just finished a master's degree. So we had 5 people in 5 different schools last semester. Originally from Texas, I'm a Navy chaplain, active duty. I'm wearing my uniform of the day, civilian clothes, because I'm currently working at the VA doing some chaplain training in a hospital setting, but still active duty chaplain. I have prior enlisted, I was a Navy musician, and then I've been a chaplain for a little over 9 years. I've been stationed with Marines in Beaufort with MJ, and then with Seabees in Gulfport, Mississippi, operationally. And then most recently, I was on a ship in San Diego, and currently in San Diego at least through August until we PCS back to Beaufort. So glad to be here, glad to share my perspective of how we can give you all resources on growing yourself spiritually.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chaplain Sargent, and welcome. Next up is Megan Brown. We both happen to know Megan Brown through the Armed Forces Insurance Military Spouse of the Year program. Yes, we are connected and we bleed purple because on your screen you see Marine Corps, you see Navy, you see Army, and Megan happens to be a pretty kick-butt Air Force spouse. Megan, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for having me. My name is Megan. I am an Air Force spouse of 15 years, a homeschool mom of 4, a Christian author, and a military missionary with Crew Military. My first Bible study published through Moody Publishers in Chicago is called Summoned, Answering a Call to the Impossible. And it releases in May on the 4th. It's an 8-week expository study through the book of Esther. I'm excited to be here. I really believe that God is in fierce pursuit of the military community. We are primed and ready to serve as missionaries, carrying the gospel to the 4 corners. And that's really what I do, is equip the people of God to carry his story wherever they go.
Word. Just like, man, you just had that, like this Big Mac mouthful and it just came out so very like French food.
It's the coffee talking. It's the coffee talking. That's what it is.
Girl after my own heart. So we decided to bring this topic to you because actually we've heard from you. We've heard a lot from you that this is one of the most difficult tasks, is finding your church community when you PCS, because we have to do it every time. It's right up there with finding new friends, finding schools for your kids, and finding doctors or even employment. So we said, you know what, let's talk about this topic. Let's talk about the challenges. Let's acknowledge the problem so that we can find ways to circumvent them. So we have these awesome experts, both from the military spouse perspective, military mission perspective, and then also from the chaplain's, services perspective. There's so much encompassing our spiritual journeys. So we're going to kick it right off, and we'll start off with the questions. And the first question is going to be for you, Chaplain Sargent. So what can you tell us about chaplain services and resources available to military families aboard their installations?
Sure. So like I mentioned, I'm a Navy chaplain. So my perspective is from the Navy and Marine Corps perspective. Some of that it does translate to the Air Force and the Army, but I don't know specifics, unfortunately. When I served in Beaufort with, and MJ was there, and our families, I worked in the base chapel, and it was a pretty small community, largely made up of retirees and some of the families. And one of the things that I thought was the best part that they offered was it provided a faith community of someone that understands military service and op tempo. Like, for instance, somebody might deploy for 6 months and then, you come back and we know where you've been, we know what you've been doing. Whereas at a local church, they may say, like, why'd you leave for 6 months? So there's that shared experience and a shared perspective. So one of the other factor is chapel, at least the chapels I've been a part of, they generally offer Christian Protestant. That's a big word, but they offer a couple different communities. It's usually one that encompasses more of the denominations in the Christian church, and it's more broad. It may not be your exact experience, but then they offer also almost all of them, I think, offer a Roman Catholic community that can definitely provide, all the services that a Roman Catholic Church has, in the life of faith, baptism, confirmation, all those things that's critical to their faith journey. So that's a really pretty neat thing. When we were in Beaufort, we had a couple opportunities to provide services just as resources came up. We had a Buddhist service every week of a retired Air Force person that wanted to come and lead that. We had just some other services as well. Another thing that base chapels offer, the chaplains offer a lot of counseling. I did a lot of counseling, marriage counseling, pre-marriage counseling, some of those, life event things. Young Marines and sailors come in and they meet somebody, and I was like, let's sit down and talk. And before you get married, let's talk about, some of the things to, open your eyes wide open about what it is to be married. So that's another area. And then we also did a lot of work with Marine Corps family team building, offering classes like prep, pre-marriage class, and we would also do some other events with them. So it's usually a small community in Conus. I will say Conus, the communities are oftentimes more percentage of the base families, service member and families will be a part of that, largely because of the language and the cultural difference. And so they'll have more offerings. They may have, contract youth groups. They might have, they have a lot more services to offer families overseas, as well as, some parachurch ministries like Crew, but also Cadence International. When I was in Rhoda, there was a group that they were not part of the chapel, but they were affiliated as far as just supporting. So a lot of offerings in that the Navy and the Marine Corps and all the services have to offer on bases throughout the world.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Megan, you've PCSed, you've gone through deployment, you do a lot of everything. So what can you tell us about some of the spiritual challenges that you've experienced as a military spouse and how those challenges have kind of shaped the mission work that you do?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess to set a little bit of context, we've been married for about 15 years. We've got 4 children under 12, and we've moved 5 times, lived in 10 different houses. You could say that I'm getting really good at packing and unpacking a house at this point. But really the thing that we've struggled with, specifically around finding a church shopping is really overwhelming. And I'm sure that those of you that are watching are probably nodding your head in agreement. You get to the new place, you drop all the new boxes, and it's Saturday, and you're looking around and you're thinking next Sunday, kind of like my fitness regime. Next Monday, I'll work on that. Next Monday. Yeah. But you look around and it's really overwhelming because you have all of this emotional, these emotional things that you're processing. I kind of call it the PCS crash, right? You're working up to this move. You finally move, you drop your stuff, and it's like the bottom falls out and you're just so exhausted you can't even think straight. And then the prospect of trying to find a new church can be a little bit daunting. So let's just say you drag all your kids to church, you've mustered all the energy that you can manage. And then there's that awkward moment when they're like, if you're a guest, please stand. And, you feel your palms starting to get sweaty and you're thinking, okay, this was a mistake. and so then, you sneak out of the back quickly and you find yourself 5 to 7 weeks later, and you're still in that process of sneaking in and out of the back of local churches. And really what I have found, I have been in mission work for several years. I've been a Bible teacher for many years. I've worked in the local church and parachurch, and I think that there's some things that are constant. The first thing is that I don't think, very much similar to what Chaplain Twig was talking about, that there's not a shared experience in the local church sometimes. And that creates a little bit of a barrier to build community. They don't really understand what it's like. They're not familiar with the challenges. You know, my husband is currently stationed in Korea. We PCSed to Biloxi, and then 3 weeks later, he was on a plane. And so a fresh PCS followed by a short tour it presents challenges that I didn't even think about, because I am a seasoned church goer, church leader, community group director, and women's ministry, constructor. And so if I'm struggling with it, I can only imagine what it's like for people that are new to this lifestyle, or that are trying to acclimate well, are dealing with. And so I think the biggest challenge I would have to say is kind of transplanting yourself from one worship and faith community to another. It's funny. It's called the body of Christ, right? Like I'm a Reformed non-denominational church member. So we refer to the local body as the body of Christ. It literally is an organ transplant. I mean, you're coming out of one and into another. And it's such a difficult thing to overcome, but take hope. There are ways that you can surmount some of these obstacles.
Oh, sorry. I was muting it again. I see, that is just like the hashtag of moving from 2020 into 2021. You're muted. You're muted. Okay. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, and I'm actually, it's very in tune with my next question. So one of the biggest challenges that, obviously isn't talked about often is that issue of finding that church community after a PCS. And sometimes it's just that right fit. It's really hard to find that right fit for whatever reason. Like maybe they're a little more orthodox than you are, or maybe, it's the same religion, just a different context, and you're just not used to that particular one. And it's really, really difficult sometimes to find that. And sometimes, depending on the location, we might not find our church people at all. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this up there. Rochelle Fudge. Rochelle, shout out, girlfriend. We just PCS'd, and all the churches are only virtual. And I mean, a lot of that right now is due to COVID and, TBD in terms of how things play out. Again, people, please do your part. But so I guess my question to both of you, and we'll keep with you, Megan, since you're right there. What might you suggest that military families do either before or after their PCS to find that church community, or what might be a comparable, alternative when there are no options available, like in Rochelle's case?
Okay, so there's a couple things. Fundamentally, I believe that the local church is essential in the life of believers. We can't have, there's really not a replacement. And what I mean by that is, and obviously now with everything being virtual, being part of a local body is extremely challenging. But what I would challenge you to is to rise to the occasion. And what I mean by that is, well, I'll back up. When you're looking for a healthy church, right, there's kind of a framework that I have in my mind, a checklist, if you will. There's a passage of scripture that is just etched into my heart, and it's Acts 2:42 through 47. And it's really a clear picture of what the church should be. I mean, to summarize it, it's a group of people that are committed to the apostles' teaching, which is the word of God, right, the scriptures. They're committed to fellowship. They're committed to corporate worship, and they're committed to praying for one another. Those are kind of the tick marks in my mind for a healthy church. Most of you can go online and look up your denominational, affiliated churches in your area, and you can kind of make a preparatory list, maybe watch 1 or 2 sermons online. I like to be a little extra, and I will call the pastor of the church. And I'll be like, hey, I'm Megan Brown. I'm a military missionary, and I am coming to your area, and I've watched your church service online, and I really like you guys, and I would love to set up a coffee. Really, it's important to get to know the leaders of the church and find out fundamentally what their vision for their church bodies are. It could be community. It could be, expositional teaching. Really, it's really about focusing on what's important to you as a family, and finding a church whose culture and whose methodology really aligns with yours. And so I kind of have categories, right? Truth, worship, community, and mission. Those are the 4 non-negotiables when I'm looking for a new home church, right? When I think about truth, I want a church that teaches verse by verse through the book of the Bible. I want to know chapter and verse. There's a lot of churches out here that really love to teach topically, and that's great. But I want to know specifically what the word of the Lord says, how it applies in perfect context and culture, right? I want to know. And then the second thing is, are they dedicated to ushering people into sincere, not self-centered worship where we're just in awe of what God is doing in our lives? Are they meeting regularly outside of the community, outside of the church on Sunday? And then finally, are they sending people? Those are really the big things that I look for. But really some things to do. Research churches in the local area. Commit to finding something. And I'm going to squash your dreams a little bit. There's no perfect church out there, folks, because there's no perfect people. And if there was a perfect church out there, we would screw it up if we started going there. So let's just remove that there's a perfect church from your mind. There's not. But there is a church that has a seat open for you where you can bring your gifts and your talents and your time and your abilities, and you can serve along with another body. And really that does look different in COVID. That may look like virtual church. That may look like virtual Bible studies. I'm leading a virtual Bible study right now. 270 of us as military spouses are walking through the book of Acts together. And I can give more information about that later. But really it's about being committed to the process of making your life reflect what you say you believe. And if you say you believe in the Lord and that he's the Lord of your life, then man, you want to be around your brothers and sisters, man. That's just part of it.
Word. And you just totally flipped the script on me, because 20 years.
I got my Christian hat on.
20 years as a spouse. 20 years. Oh, we lost Chaplain Sargent. We'll get him back. 20 years as a military spouse. And I'm not even kidding you. If I would have thought for a second, MJ, you're not going to find the exact thing that's in your mind. I don't know why you're even trying, because then nobody's going to meet the buck. Nobody's going to pass it. Nobody's going to meet muster. So I'm really, I wish I would have approached different duty stations with the mindset of, okay, what are my deal breakers? Kind of similar to buying a house, actually. Yeah. What are my must-haves and what are my deal breakers? Mm-hmm. So that is a really good takeaway. I appreciate that. By the way, audience, anything, what Megan just mentioned, her, if she would like to put it out there for those who might be interested, we will drop the link if she would like. Do you want me to drop the link for that?
Sure. So we're doing it in a Facebook group because really with COVID, just like Rochelle said earlier, everything is virtual, and women are really struggling. Women are really struggling to find their grasp, to find community. And really the reason that we do a virtual and online Bible study is because we all have that shared experience and that shared sacrifice of being a military spouse or an active duty military woman. And really what I love about what we've built is an opportunity to have the conversation, to grow spiritually together. I believe that everything is done better together. And so we're going through this handy dandy book. This is Erica Wiggenhorn's Study Through Acts. It's called An Unexplainable Life. And we are spending the next 10 weeks, starting on January 21st, together. There will be questions and prompts, and every Thursday night at 7 Central Standard Time, we're going to be meeting on Zoom. Show up in your pajamas, throw on your favorite sweats and grab a cuppa and just jump on and join us. I'll share all that information in a link. I can send that to you if you want to put it up on the screen. But it's the Mil Spouse Online Bible Study on a Facebook group, and I'll send that to you, MJ.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, go ahead and do that through the private chat. We did lose Chaplain Sargent. I just messaged him. Actually, here he is. Let me put him in here. Yay! He's back. Woo! Just in time.
I'm one of those old guys who technology challenge.
Oh, don't you dare date yourself. No. No dating here.
We have technology challenges, and we like to consider ourselves young. If you watch some of our past webinars, you guys will see some of our technology challenges that we have.
But I mean, this is work from home life, right? Like this is life, like legit life. This is real. So Chaplain Sargent, I'll rephrase the question and pose it to you as well. For those, sure. For those families who can't seem to, find that right fit, or, sometimes can't find any anything at all, especially if they're, say, in a remote location or something. So what might you suggest to those military families? What would you suggest they do before or after their PCS to find that community? Or what might be a comparable alternative? We know we already have virtual, but what other options are available?
Let's see. Was this the question you just asked, Megan? I'm
yes.
sorry. I'm like getting
yes.
you right. Okay. So, Megan, thought I appreciated most about what she said was, you're not going to find the exact experience of your favorite church that you're up with. And so just that reality, it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. I feel that, and I am a pastor in a specific denomination, and every time I move to a certain place, I go to that denomination. So very specific, and I've never been to the same church. And I often grieve even things like, wow, I wish this church had that, or I wish, it was like this other church. So just some realities, even within one denomination, there's so many differences. And I think what's helpful is just to ask, and I'm going to assume that some of the audience are maybe, Christian, maybe Roman Catholic, maybe Jewish, or, various faiths. What you can do is reach out to, if you're part of a congregation in your community before you move, just ask them, hey, do you have any connections where I'm going, right? And also before, and maybe even after you PCS, ask the chaplain in your local, your command, or your spouse's command, or on the base, hey, help me figure out what it is that I'm looking for. Megan, you mentioned earlier that you're Reformed and non-denominational. I know what that is, but maybe a lot of people don't even know what that means or know what they want. And so, to your point, helping figure out what are those essential things for you for a church home. Is it their expository preaching? Is it child and youth programs? Is it voluntary opportunities? Is it kind of music? Helping you to understand what it is you want, what it is that's essential to you, and what it is maybe that would be nice to have. So I think oftentimes we come to we go somewhere and we just have this expectation. This is going to be how I, and how I want it, but you don't even know what it is that you want. And so helping you to clarify, what's important to you as a person pursuing tradition. I appreciate Megan's boldness to just go ahead and call it the pastor. That is confidence.
You have no idea, Sargent. No idea.
I mean, you can't have crazy colored hair like this and not be a little cocky.
I get nervous going up to like the new guest desk table and everything and saying, hi, I'm new, but just calling the pastor is above my
and with such energy and gumption. I mean,
I think
you can share that confidence
about most pastors, right? They're just guys, right? They're just regular guys. And I think about just the difficulty right now of shepherding a church through COVID has got to be probably one of the most just gut-wrenching and difficult things to do, to maintain public safety, to maintain congregational health, and simultaneously be able to meet the needs of your congregation. It's really hard. And so one of the main reasons I call them is to encourage them. Right? Hi, I'm coming your way. I wanted to meet you. I know that I'm praying for you. That we hope that we get to meet when we get there. That we're excited. That I love your church service. Man, there was this guy. He has a church here on the Gulf Coast, and I watched him for 3 months before we moved. And now, I'm friends with the whole leadership team. I was like, dude, you're the man. This is great. You're killing it. And it's just so good to encourage those who are in ministry for a living, who do this as a vocation. Cause it's hard work, brother. It's hard.
Yeah. So I just, we talk about trying to find our church and, the church dating, just trying to give encouragement to others out there that are going through this experience, trying to find their church. You're not the first person to go through it. The first church you go to is not always the place where you're going to be staying at. Take it from someone who has, taken a year to find what we've called our church home at locations. So just know, you're not the first one. Everybody's done it, except for maybe Megan, because she calls people ahead of time. But you're not the first
Doesn't always work.
And don't be afraid to reach out, but just continue to have that confidence that, that you will find the place that you are called to be at. And it may not be that first place that you think is perfect and amazing. And it may not be the similar church that you went to before. So in my experience, we've gone to First Baptist churches because we can usually find one at different locations. There was one at one location I absolutely loved. I found my tribe. I found my people, some of my lifelong friends there. Went to one at another location, complete different experience. So just know what you had at one, you may not have at another. It's all going to be different, but just have that confidence that you will find where you are supposed to be, even if it takes a little bit of time. So moving in, COVID, showed up last year. It's hard. Last year, we no longer have to say this year. Last year, COVID showed up. This pandemic has basically impacted every aspect of our lives, just from how schooling, working, and right now with church services, and that a lot of families are not able to have that ability to continue some of those things that they've looked forward to or have done in the past, from baby dedications, children baptisms, so going through and talking about some of those things, what can a military family do when they find themselves like in those positions when they're someplace new and they can't get their child baptized because of COVID policies for that area, and how might they navigate some of these issues during the COVID time?
And let me just say that I wrote this question because not because I want everybody to know the answer, but I specifically, I'm just, for the record, I'm Catholic. Ash Wednesday is coming on up, and I'm a little scared. I'm a little scared that I won't be able to do what I have been doing my entire life.
Yeah.
So,
Chaplain, I'm going to let you take this one first, and I'll piggyback because I have
Sure.
a couple of things, but I would love to hear what you have to say on that one.
Sure. So even as a leader in a church, I feel that same sense of, my experience, I'm in California, so we're on like hardcore lockdown over here, right? Southern California, it's even worse, right? So for 3 months, we were unable to meet in person with our church. And thankfully, around June, our church started meeting. We meet outdoors, of course, in San Diego. You can do that year round, right? So that's not a problem for us. That's actually, I prefer it now, actually. And I found coming back to worship, I just hungered for community. And so I feel that loss personally. And one of the things that I want to encourage those listeners is to take the long view on this. This is a season of life. It's stressful, and yet it's not the rest of our lives, right? It is a season in life. And secondly, what are some benefits to this change in routine? It might shake up our routine, and opportunity to reorder priorities. I know we find ourselves exhausted oftentimes going to Sunday school, to church, to this thing. And, it's been kind of refreshing. But what I would say to those that are struggling for how to address that, some churches are specifically doing, some of those sacraments like baptism and the Lord's Supper. I know our church, the church I go to out in town, has the little communion cups that, those of us that are deployed, it's a little wafer with the juice in a container. We do that as a church. And we even had baptisms. It's a little weird, because the weird from, our normal experience, because, people are wearing gloves and that kind of thing. So, take the long view. This is a season in life. And then, I'd also say, what are some new opportunities for spiritual practices? It might be home family worship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Singing songs, plunking out on the guitar or the piano some songs, online small groups. I know we're part of that, or even starting your own small group. One of the wonderful things about COVID is geography is not a limiter anymore, right? We can do stuff online with people that we've connected with in the past, with family members. geography doesn't keep us from that opportunity to try out new practices with family members. So I'll stop there and let Megan pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that there's an opportunity to do new things and to really explain to our families, to our children, what it is we believe and why. I think if COVID has done anything, it's really exposed what we really believe and what we really value. Yeah. It's really shown us what we're like, really putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, to really live it out well. Most of last year, churches were virtual. And at first, to be honest, I was relieved for a little bit of a break, right? Like we got a break. We got to land the plane and fix a few things instead of, doing maintenance in the air. As a church leader, I was like, oh man, like we get a little bit of a minute to breathe and to change a few things. But then I got restless. After 2 or 3 weeks of church in my pajamas, I wanted to be around people that I wanted to worship with. I longed for that first church hug, right? And there was this moment when our churches opened back up. We were still doing masks and we were still doing social distancing. Families were allowed to sit together, but it was literally every other pew, right? And there was this moment, we went back to church. This was back when we were in Warner Robins. It was the summer where, COVID had kind of taken a little bit of a dip. And so they finally started opening back up. And we're sitting in church and they're singing How Great Thou Art, right? And my 12-year-old was sitting next to me. And I just all of a sudden felt this tiny hand grab mine. And she's standing, both hands in the air. And I'm wrecked. I'm crying big people tears, right? Because I just miss that. There's something beautiful about corporate worship, right? Together in the Lord's house with your family. And so really, it's about finding ways to create those small, intimate moments with the Lord wherever you are. While I do believe that the church is essential, I also believe that if we have no other way of connecting with the Lord, like we've got to be able to usher ourselves there through the study of his word, through worship, through prayer, through being in community, whether that is in person or virtual. It gives us an opportunity, basically what the chaplain just said, to create new spiritual habits of being with the Lord in whatever context we can,
Well said.
Again with the mute. Gosh, with the mute. Okay, I wish I could mute my kiddos sometimes. I love them. My kiddos are older, by the way. So like 19 and 22. Yeah, sometimes you still want that little. But
I had that mute button going a minute ago. My son was in here running around in circles with our dog. I'm like, dude, we just talked about this.
You thought you were done and ready.
So Megan, I really like how you kind of mentioned, take ownership of that spiritual journey and that, that part of things, because, often we kind of wait around for something to happen so that we could just go with it. But sometimes we have to be the ones to make that happen. By the way, we don't often think about, either whether it's church or religion or spirituality, we don't think of that as innovative in any way, or that we can be innovative with that in any way. Again, where I come from, we're pretty much traditional across the board. It's been that way since the beginning of time. And you don't think that there's anything that's going to change or become innovative. But this is like, there's so much value add in so many things. And we don't know that until we're put in this position, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of ownership and, being resourceful versus having that resource always, sometimes we get orders to places we don't want to go. And by sometimes, I mean, holy crap, every duty station, including the one we're at right now. Right. So for families like that, how might you go about helping a military family kind of navigate that mindset? Because it's really easy to get stuck in and very difficult to get out of. So we'll start with you, Meg.
Okay. So repeat that question one more time.
So if sometimes we get orders that we don't want to. So how might we help military families navigate that mindset, especially since it's so easy to fall into and difficult to get out of?
Okay, now I understand. So I think that there's a certain grief that we kind of have to deal with when we get orders that we don't want. When my husband got orders to Korea, he had already been he'd been deployed almost all of 2019. He got back in late January, early February, and in May there were orders for a year-long short tour, and it was a gut check. And really, I had to bring it before the Lord and say, are there lessons that I was supposed to learn during this last deployment that I did not? I mean, help me out here, because it was a grieving process. I was really frustrated because, I missed my husband. I was so glad when he got back. My kiddos had really a hard time during the deployment last year. Mm-hmm. And we're 4 months into a 12-month tour. And so really the first thing is it's okay to not be okay. That's mm-hmm. the first thing. God doesn't want your false positivity. That's the first thing that I can say. He doesn't really want your false positivity. He wants your authenticity. He wants you to come to him in relationship and not in perfection or presumption or, making a list of all the ways that you're doing things right. I think that we can grieve those things. And simultaneously we can trust, right? There's a big theological term. It's called sovereignty. But really what we believe is that God is in charge, right? And whatever your faith is, there's an element of trust, right? For me, that trust is in the Lord and his provision, that he's going to provide everything that I need, regardless of my circumstances. And so that's really what I cling to in those moments where something happens that I'm not down with, which in this military life is a lot, right? I mean, there's so many things that I'm like, Lord, I don't know if I'm down with this. But it's really about surrender and trust. That's probably my two practical applications.
Yeah, well said, Megan. I would say, what I found in my experience, I know I have my theology, but what I found in my experience is I often find how God has worked when I look in the rearview mirror, and I've seen, man, God really supported us in that time, going someplace we didn't like, and I've had that, right? And I can't say that it's past tense that I may be going someplace I don't want to go again, but God may have something to show us that we don't know yet. And the way my family has reconciled that, and we are not perfect, is we have taken some time, at times to reflect, on previous duty stations. What was it that we liked about that duty station? What was it that we didn't like? And in every case, we found something of both, something that we really liked, something unique to that area, and maybe something that we didn't like. But, we were able to see and, help ourselves see, hey, maybe there's something that I don't know, some benefit that I don't know is coming yet. So trusting, getting back to Megan's point of trust.
Well, and really, so the book I just finished that's releasing in May, it's called Summoned, but it's really a look at the life of Esther. And the heartbeat of that book is that God is good when things are bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes, and depending on, what denomination you grew up in, or if you grew up in church at all, there's been this narrative around the book of Esther, one that it's a book for girls. And then that's interesting to me. But the really big thing about Esther is that it was presented maybe as a bedtime story. There was a beautiful young girl who married a very powerful man and she saved God's people, or you saw the cartoon version. But really, if you look at the culture and the context of what's going on in that book, it was really a lot, I mean, for lack of a better word, and this may be a little controversial, but it was really racial tensions and sex trafficking. If you really read the book of Esther, it is not pretty. There's not a bow. But the theme of the book is that all throughout these deplorable situations and terrible circumstances, God is faithfully moving when he feels unseen and not near. And so when we feel this frustration about dealing with orders we don't want, or deployments, or seasons of drought, it's really that we can trust that God is with us in those places.
Yeah.
Really quick, I just want to throw this out there. Your book drops the May 4th, correct?
Yes. May the 4th be with you. How great is it that my book drops?
I wanted to say it so bad.
I was so excited when my publishing company called me and they're like, how's May the 4th? I'm like, can I bring my lightsaber? This is going to be epic.
Great for you.
Yes. Yes.
So to our audience, I wanted to let you know that we are going to pre-order a copy of Megan's book for the winner of today's giveaway. So as always, for many of you on here, you already know, but for those of you who are newbies and don't, the more engagement that we see, questions, comments, suggestions. LOL smiley faces are encouraged, but don't count as an entry. But every time you comment, question, or concern, you will be entered to win a copy of Megan's upcoming book, which will be released on May the 4th. Be with you.
Yeah. And to go to that question, as somebody who is currently living in a location where I, kind of came kicking and screaming, one of the things that I always, kind of cling to is that, God has the plan, and this is part of his plan for my journey, for my life, and whatever it is on. And coming here, we're in a remote location, so we're not near a regular military installation. So I don't have my PWOC, I don't have my spouse club, I don't have my regular military community. I'm not an hour away from the beach anymore. I'm not 2 hours away from DC anymore, where a lot of my friends are. And so in a way, it was just like God was kind of stripping me of like everything that I had relied on and was involved in, and it's looking at, what is he trying to do for us, and what is he trying to do for our family? And one of the things that it took me a while to realize, but we have a lot of family time here. And for us, we never really had that the last 2 years. My husband left for work at 5 a.m, and he got home around 7, 8 o'clock at night because of the position that he was in. He was deployed for 9 months in there. And so just looking at things, you have to always, kind of go back to God has a plan for you, and going to that location that you don't want to go to, getting those orders that you don't want. There's a reason for that. That's part of your story. And in a way, you kind of have to embrace that. And then the other thing I always lean on is that, you can live wherever, for 2 to 3 years. You can make do with whatever for the 2 to 3 years, and it'll make for a great story later. I've always found, no matter what it is, you always get a good story out of anything. So when we talk about moving, it's already a very stressful situation. You're packing up your home, you're entrusting your things to complete strangers to move it from point A to point B. You're finding new schools for your kids, a new job for you, a new community to be in. And then, finding a new church, a new Bible study group, and all that stuff, and for a lot of folks, this can be very stressful. It can be sometimes very traumatizing, especially for our children. So how do you guys suggest for families that are experiencing that stress and that trauma of relocating to help them maintain their emotional and spiritual well-being through the process?
Yeah. I'd go ahead and start. If one of the things I would say is self-care. It's a term we use a lot in the chaplaincy world and in the healthcare world of self-care, taking care of yourself. And when I say self, I mean spiritually, but I also mean physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so, maintaining practices that help you keep grounded, right? If it's, working out regularly, do that. If it's doing your devotionals every day, do that, definitely. If it's connecting with, those people that are encouraging and lift you up, maintain those connections. And oftentimes in the move, the stress, it throws off our rhythm. And so, we don't realize, hey, we stopped doing things that were feeding us. And then we realize, wow, the stress has really gone up. And part of it may be that we stopped doing those things that were helping us cope with the stress. That, we're all going through stress, in the midst of the move, while we're there, when we're getting ready to leave. So maintaining self-care. And I would say, secondly, practice forgiveness. One of the things I've found as adults, we as adults are not very good at forgiving and offering forgiveness. And yet I expect that of my children, but I don't practice it. And so, acknowledging, hey, I'm not gonna do this move perfectly. I'm gonna lose my temper. I'm gonna get, I'm gonna do, things that are, I'm gonna be mean at times. And so, apologizing, in my tradition, Paul talks about being the chief of sinners, right? He's the one who wrote most of the New Testament, and yet he was the one to say, I'm first in line to apologize and offer forgiveness. And our children will definitely grow from that experience.
And I have so many thoughts. So the first thing that I want to talk about with the stress of moving, right? Especially I've been here for 4 months, and I feel like I'm just now in the groove of a new routine. It takes 4 to 6 months to get settled anywhere, no matter how hard you try to rush it, no matter how many things you try to force to make happen. It really takes about 4 to 6 months to get into any kind of routine. And really what I've learned just through this last year is that I have to ask myself, what are the essentials that I have to do right now? Because when we look at this long to-do list of getting set up in a new place, it's almost enough to make you freeze. I've got to get, we got to re-enroll the kids in this school, or we got to file our letter of intent, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do that. We've got to go church shopping, and we've got to get job stuff worked out. I've got to transfer all our medical records. I've got to and the list never stops. And so there are moments when I have to ask myself, what is it that I need in this moment? What is it that I need in the next 5 minutes, in the next 10 minutes? And when I feel like that stress is kind of up to my eyeballs, it's taking a step back, releasing some things and saying, okay, this doesn't have to get done right now. What absolutely do I have to do right this moment? And then what would give me a little bit of a breather? And for me, the other day, it was nuts. I'm trying to work all the kids testing and all this crazy stuff around. And I was really, kind of going out of my mind. And all I wanted was some Chick-fil-A and a friend. So, and just if you know me, there's always a Chick-fil-A shop near me somewhere. So I went before this call. So for me, it's what are the things that are life-giving to you? I'll piggyback on the self-care thing. I think self-care is important. Yeah. But I also think that being self-aware, you can't give yourself self-care if you're not self-aware. So one thing about me is I am the queen of extroverts. If I'm alone too long, I start getting a little batty. And so when we moved here and my husband left, I was like, I need a person. I need someone. So I need adult conversation. Somebody talk to me. And so I went through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. I called my best friend on video chat or my mom. Those are kind of, my go-tos. But you have to know yourself. Are you encouraged by company, or are you charged by a good book and a hot cup of coffee and no sound? Like, learn the rhythms. I know that I start getting I have a few tells, right? Like, I struggle with depression. And so if I am binge watching TV and I'm losing motivation, that's phase 1. If I don't want to get out of bed or get dressed, that is phase 2. And I am about to hit rock bottom if someone doesn't come get me, or if I don't bootstrap out of it, right? So like, you just have to know yourself, right? And I think that's what I would encourage. Know yourself so you can care for yourself.
You know what's so interesting when you said that, Megan, that, okay, phase 1 is, and then phase 2 is, yeah. So I used to teach a course called I have a whole bunch that I took. The 4 lenses. 4 lenses is based on the Myers-Briggs personality test. It associates your personality with each color. We are all the colors, but we have a dominant one. And so when we downshift from our primary color to the other ones, you're going to start to know, well, that's out of character. For instance, I am orange all day long. Orange is very gregarious, and they value freedom overall, and they are typically extroverts. But if you see that person, say, downshift into at my least color, which is gold, which is very organized, on point, lists, labels on label makers type deal, if you come to my house and you see me with a label maker, you better check on me. Because you better call me. There's a problem. Mayday. And so that self-awareness, teaching stuff like that and knowing about yourself and your personality and those out of character things, that's very true, because sometimes we're just not aware, and then somebody has to say, dude, what's wrong with you? Because you don't do this and you are now doing this. And so not waiting for that would be very helpful. I'm sure my husband would have loved for me to have known this information years ago.
Right. Well, and so like the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ. Color-wise, I'm equal gold or green and orange, which is interesting. I'm crazy. But one of the things that I think is important is I'm an Enneagram 8. Like, look up these personality things. And I agree. When you start to shift and your character or your activities are different, my friends know the telltale signs. They'll be like, hey, girl, you all right? You okay in there? Have those core people who know. And really in our tradition, it's confess what's going on in your life to other believers. That is key. You got to have your core 3 to 5 people that really know. My husband is one of those. I've got 2 or 3 close friends. My mom, like they can start to see when I'm off the reservation, right? I'm
sure. And if there's anybody out there who would like to, as Megan said, confess, and I will equate that to mouth puking. Anybody who needs that and doesn't have that at the moment, you know what? Feel free to hit up our Facebook page. I got you back. We got you. We got you.
Yep.
Okay. I got a question about kiddos. So here's the deal. What can we do to help them, keeping in mind, their frame of mind? What can we do to help them on their, spiritual journey, and explain to them, that our relationship with God, for instance, is still with us, even in a different location? How do we explain that to them? Obviously, keeping age appropriate, but how?
Go.
I'm breaking up a little bit, so hopefully I don't lose y'all. But I would say, this is a question about, how do we help our children? Did I understand it correctly? How do we help our children in their spiritual journey?
And let them know that, just because we move doesn't mean, like, we can take God with us, for instance.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is cool, and my tradition doesn't necessarily practice it, but in several traditions, whether it be Jewish or liturgical Christian, there is called a liturgical calendar. And so there's certain events throughout the year that are every year, right? Like for instance, with your study on Esther, Megan, the Jewish season of Purim, which is about the story of Esther, is coming up, right? And so that's a touch point, if you will, for them to experience their faith. And it's not going to change. Every year you're going to have that same, or it may be different, specific, but every year you're going to have those days that are part of your tradition. So, practice those traditions, maybe even create new traditions in those times. I know, with my family, we created some new family traditions with Christmas, working at a chapel, I'm always working on Christmas Eve. And so our family, instead of making the big meal on Christmas Eve, we would get takeout, and we would get finger poppers and watch like White Christmas. That's not like really liturgical, but my family has a tradition that we practice on Christmas. To say, hey, this is our family. This is, this is not going to change every year, even if life changes. So I'll leave it at that, and go ahead.
I mean, for our family, I'll say it this way: discipleship really starts at home. I've got 4 kids. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old son, 8-year-old son, and a 5-year-old daughter. And one of the reasons that we homeschool is so that I can disciple them and really help them create a biblical worldview, because it's through this worldview that they're going to interpret what they see around them. We want them to love well. We want them to follow Jesus, to love people, and to live on mission, right? That's in our family's homeschool, mission statement. We want them to understand how their faith plays out in practicality. I feel like when I was growing up, and I grew up outside of the church, I didn't become a believer until I was in my 20s. And really, when I looked around, I just saw the world as a bad place. People are hurtful, they're rough, they're mean, they're rigid. Simultaneously, the people that proclaim to love the Lord are just as bad, right? Like that was my perspective as a young adult. I looked around and I didn't see any difference. And it took really the radical transformation that the Lord just kind of crashed in on me and opened my eyes and revealed himself to me, that I was able to see things a little differently. And so with my children who have never known a time without the Lord, we spend a lot of time talking about how our faith fleshes out. We had a family member that was diagnosed with a pretty difficult prognosis. And so we were able to really talk about, what does it mean? What do we really believe? Are we going to be frantic? Are we going to be yes, we're going to be upset. Yes, we're going to grieve, but we're going to trust. Trust looks like X, Y, Z. It really looks like living your faith out in front of your children. I feel like so many times we rely on the church, on the youth pastors and the youth programs to disciple our children. And we almost have a programmatic approach to it. But really the kids are catching more than they're being taught. Right? They're watching, they're viewing. And so Your peace is a testimony to your children. Your graciousness is a testimony to your children. Your compassion, your charity, whatever virtue you want to place in that blank, you're showing your kids what you believe. And so without the burden of adding on, hey, well, why don't you do this or that or this or that, or start reading a family devotional, or start doing this or start doing that. Really just have an honest conversation with your spouse, with what you want your children to know about you, and really specifically what you want them to know about the Lord through you. And I think that might, kind of give you a little bit of a break and grace. But how we help our kids is by nurturing our relationship with the Lord, and therefore letting the outpour of that relationship with the Lord affect them. That's big answer.
Word.
Yeah.
Megan, do you want to, Megan Harless, do you want to go ahead and ask that last one that's under the advice, tips, resources section? I will ready.
Yeah, as you catch me off guard, because I didn't see that one in there.
I switcherooted on you. See?
Technology, you've got to stop this. Okay, so in general, to kind of wrap up, what is the number one tip or piece of advice that you would want to give to a spouse or a family on how they can keep their faith when they do their next PCS?
Yeah, I would say to endorse what Megan just said, model your faith practice as a priority for your family. Yeah, just live it out. You're not going to live it out perfectly, but as you live it out, if you seek to live it out, your children are going to see that, and they're going to want that. There's a Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he or she should grow, and when he or she is old, they will not depart. And as you model that, they're going to take up that faith. So keeping that your faith practice a priority.
Mm. And really, I think that my piece of advice is to really build up what you believe about the local church, whether that is a local church off base or if that's a chapel with the chaplain corps. Really, a faith body, a faith family is essential. It's not a nicety. It's not a novelty. It is essential for the Christian faith. It is something that we cannot do apart from the church. It's so important. And so my challenge would be to really commit to the process of finding a church home, even if it's not perfect, even if they don't have all the programs you want, even if it doesn't have, all the bells and whistles that you're used to, or it has too much. Find a place to worship and worship well. And that would be my tip.
Yeah. Well said.
Word. And I just want to throw a little something in there, something that that I just kind of thought of when we were talking about, being innovative and creative, especially during this time. When we move, whether it's COVID or not, when we move, we may want to consider, because we're not going to find that perfect fit. I actually made a habit of going when I'm asked by friends who may not have the same traditions as I do, to attend with them. I'm there for them, but I always am challenged, and I get to see things through a different lens, and it helps me to understand my friends a little bit more, and where they're at in their spiritual journey. And there's nothing on this planet that says I need to subscribe to one thing or another. That is very personal to an individual. But I went to a Catholic Mariana school in Hawaii, and we had to mandatory take about 15 religion classes. So I learned about so many. And the more that I learned, the different lenses that I saw that stuff through, I had so many epiphanies, it's not even funny. And we could all use an epiphany here and there. So if you get the chance, and if you're ever asked, check it out, man. Go with your buddy. Go, one team, one fight, and check it out and see. You might think of something or learn something or experience something that you wouldn't have otherwise thought you would have. Just a thought.
Just kind of a last thought. One of the reasons that we do an online Bible study is because it's a portable faith community. Some of these women have been with me for 7 years. These are women that started in my living room 7 years ago, and we've just grown and grown and grown. And now there are hundreds of us that are walking through the scriptures together. We've made new friendships. We can carry them. So you can build a consistent community of faith that stays with you. That no matter where you move, you've got a family of believers that you can come to for accountability, for encouragement. there's an African proverb that I love. If you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I live and breathe it. I want to go together. I believe in really building up those people and going forever. So that's kind of what we do. So you can have consistency in your faith community and have portability. So that's my last thought.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So while our lovely Stacey Benson, our community outreach manager over at PCS Grades, is sending me the list of names, I would love to thank both of you. Thank you so much for coming on today. Again, this isn't, I honestly can say this isn't something that I ever thought was a, such a hot topic, something that weighed heavily in a lot of families' hearts. And I just want to thank you both from both of your perspectives, because it's necessary, it's needed. I don't know if you saw the engagement in the comments section. There are a few questions which we will address, people, on the back end. And of course, we have Chaplain Sargent and Megan are both willing and able to allow us to follow up with them if you have any questions and you're catching this on a replay, because we have a huge Oconus following, FYI. But thank you very, very much, both of you, for coming on to talk about this today. Okay, so we have the wheel of names. And again, let me share my screen. Don't judge the brain, people. I'm the one with 85 tabs open at a given second. I'm going to share what we're giving away today. I mentioned that we're going to be giving away Megan's book, which will drop on the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. If I could just, technology, I'm telling you, right? See. So answering a call to the impossible summoned by Megan B. Brown. This is going to be our giveaway today. And one moment while I get my brain. Sorry. We're going to drop these names in here. And on your mark, get set. Let's reshare. See, this is why people come to watch my they come to watch Murphy crawl straight up my rear end, live and in living color, right? Okay, so here we go. And drum roll.
Oh, that thing is cool. You got a little wheel.
Yes, the wheel of names. Monica, congratulations.
Congratulations, Monica.
That is awesome. Monica, we will, if you could PM us, please, at the PCS Grades. Oh, please stop share. At the PCS Grades Facebook page, message us so we can get your information. We will pre-order that once the pre-orders are open. Got lockstep with Megan over here. She's going to let me know the second that it happens. And we will make sure to get that to you when it is finally released. You will be receiving that copy. Again, thank you everyone who was watching. Thank you, Chaplain Sargent. Thank you, Megan Brown. And as always, thank you, our PCS reform advocate, AKA Megan Harless. And until next week, Megan.
This too shall PCS.
Bye, everybody.